Welcome everybody. We're here tonight to have a debate about smart contracts and building on blockchains. So what an exciting time to be alive and working in the Bitcoin and blockchain space and the world of Web3. Bitcoin hit an all-time high today at 50K in this cycle. There's only 62 days left to the halving. And at the recent Satoshi's roundtable in Dubai, the takeaways were Bitcoin layer 2s are likely to emerge as the top category in the next cycle, with new devs and capital moving in. There's about expected that the layer 2 market could come out at around 100 billion in this cycle. And some of the founders for Bitcoin apps and protocols who couldn't raise funds in the last 6 months are getting oversubscribed now. So it looks like VC money is chasing seed stages for Bitcoin layer 2s and apps. And like the scaling in the ETH days, there's 3 to 5 new layer 2s coming online, launching in the next 6 months, and they're expecting 10 over the next 12 to 18 months. So I think, a bit of reflection back on the Immutable X days when they raised $200 million towards the end of the last cycle. That's a taste of what's coming, I think. But so, a whole new world of infrastructure is being built on layer 2s and layer 1s on Bitcoin and everywhere else in the ecosystem. But tonight we're talking about programmability on Bitcoin. And we've got an absolute star lineup of speakers with us tonight. Welcome to Lucas Cullen from DLTX, Herman Schofield from Sphere 10 Software. My apologies.
It's Schoenfeld on Sphere 10 Software. Thanks.
Oh, thanks for the correction. Sphere 10 Software. Ian Banksia, Clarity developer that's working with us, and Michael Cotton from Optio Capital. And Joe from Labrys, welcome to the speakers tonight. So thanks for joining us, guys. It's going to be a great night. So
thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
You're welcome. I hope the noise in the background isn't too bad. It is feeding hour around everyone's homes tonight. Really appreciate everyone's time, taking the time out to share with what's going on in the ecosystem. So tonight is really about opportunities for new developers. As we go into the bull run, a lot of new developers are going to come into the ecosystem, and it's our job as people building communities or building developer houses to help them, gain new skills and integrate themselves into the ecosystem. So I wanted to go with it on the context of it tonight. Think of me as a new developer or a full stack developer working in Web 2, and I want to make the move into adding Web 3 smart contracts to my resume. So basically, where do I start? And so the question would be, what chain and why? Bitcoin versus ETH versus Solana being the top 3. And tonight I've got Lucas and Ian Banksia, both experienced software developers, and we just wanted to have a conversation about that journey into smart contracts. So when it comes to smart contracts, where bugs and hacks cause real-world consequences, there's no real recourse. Security is absolutely paramount. When it comes to security, in my view and all the research that I've done, Bitcoin is still the king. It's the secure, most decentralized blockchain in the world right now. It's never been hacked, and the financial resources required to pull off a successful attempt make it pretty much unfeasible. The other thing I like about it, it is an open network. Anyone can contribute to it. Anyone can become a miner. And over the years, it's grown to be the largest decentralized network. So it's basically practically impossible for miners to collude to alter the Bitcoin state and the ledger. So the immutability is there. Why would I want to build a $1 billion company anywhere else? But we can cover that later because we've got some experts here for that. So when it comes to building smart contracts, Ethereum's got EVM. Ethereum and EVM compatible chains have Solidity. The leading layer 2 for Bitcoin is Stacks that uses Clarity, and Solana uses a language called Anchor that utilizes Rust. So what I wanted to cover tonight was with Lucas and Ian was that if I was starting out, let's dive into some differences between those smart contract languages, what we should be looking out for. I see that, you know, the more newer language like Clarity are what we call smart contracts. They're less complex. The attack vectors are a lot less. But let's dive into that. So I've got a slide I was just going to show with the differences between Ethereum and Stacks to kick off. But Ian, Lucas, could you take this away and start having a conversation about smart contracts, what to look at, what we should be concerned about? If I looked at Rec Capital, you know, there's a lot of smart contracts that have been hacked. But yeah, can you start us off there?
Sure. Well, I'll take the reins, and thanks for throwing up about 20 strawman arguments for the first opening gambit. This is going to be an awesome debate. So yeah, I've been developing on Bitcoin since 2011. I've been a professional developer for over 20 years. I've probably fluent in 5 to 10 languages, a lot of the C-based languages. So I'm arguably the only person here who can have a valid opinion on all of the chains. So we'll just clarify a few Gordon's misinformation points at the start, just to set the tone. So Ethereum has also never been hacked. We have applications, which we call smart contracts, which may have vulnerabilities, and that's a loose term as well. There has been, you know, back in 2011, and Herman can probably contest to this, forks in Bitcoin, which had reorgs and rollbacks on the chain. So we should be clear that no technology is prone to bugs. If you actually look at the Bitcoin blockchain, the initial initial transactions don't actually conform to the specifications. So writing parsers over the chain, you actually have to be tolerant of bad programming at the start, where a more purist chain like Ethereum, with the hindsight of Bitcoin, took all those into consideration. Also making the bad correlation between smart contracts and the chain. Sure, Bitcoin has a programming language in it. It's a force-based language. So again, that's trying to, you know, program on Fortran versus a modern language. So although there may not be bugs, as you say, it's also the tooling might not be there to catch those bugs as well. So yeah, Rec Capital is good, but it's also an attestation to how many contracts have been deployed onto the Ethereum, and shows you the power of the platform. So I'll throw over to our other guest, and then maybe we can continue the thread. I'd like to hear his insights into Clarity and how he gets around, you know, programming with 10-minute block times.
That's good. Thanks, Lucas, and thanks, Gordon, for the intro. I think, first of all, I do agree. Like, we're not talking about hacking Ethereum as a blockchain. It's more the security of the applications being built, right? And then again, in hindsight, it's probably easier to look at everything that happened in the last maybe, I don't know, 5, 10 years, you know, in that space, and say, hey, here's a way to do that with a more secure approach from a developer and user perspective, right? And I guess that's where Clarity come into place, because it's more like well, there are like a few points in the sense that is like it's a language that is not Turing complete and is not compiled, and therefore there is a less, let's say, there is less space for you as a developer or even as a hacker to actually, have a sharing. Oh yeah, that's a good image to at least explain some of the difference, right? Yeah, so you can see it's a very decidable language. The types and everything is really limited by intention. And then that, of course, results ideally in more secure applications, right? But that being said, it is true that the ecosystem in itself is smaller, right? And therefore, it's unfair to simply compare, hey, Ethereum has way more problems than Bitcoin or stacks because, well, the magnitude of the total contracts being deployed and even the assets being invested, it's smaller, right? So I guess a good comparison probably will be when, let's say, in the early 2000s, if you are to choose an operational system and you are in between Windows and Mac OS, right? Most people will be using Mac without an antivirus 20 years ago, not only because Mac was in theory more safe to use, but because less people were using, and therefore there may be less incentive for people to try to create attacks against that when you compare to Windows, where everyone was using, and therefore they're, let's say, more of a target in the back for that. That being said, programming using 10-minute block is a pain in the ass. Yes, it is. It's not ideal. And I guess Stacks is trying to solve that with the new Nakamoto release. We'll be closer to what Solana can offer regarding the time frame. But also, it allows us to, one thing that is good and is different between Ethereum and Stacks as a layer 2 of Bitcoin is the access you can have to all the Bitcoin assets and transactions, right? So you can clearly read any state of a Bitcoin transaction, and that allows you to easily tap into new frameworks such as ordinal runes and so on and so forth, right? So I guess it's a bit of a new economy growing on that explores the idea of Bitcoin not only as an asset, but some more or somewhat as a platform for you to build upon. So yeah, not sure if that makes sense or it complicates even more, but it's just some initial thoughts on that. So yeah.
Yeah, nice one. So I think that one of the questions there I'd have is, Lucas, when you're talking about Solidity, how do you actually know, like, how do you deal with the complexity of a language that's what we call not readable?
Well, it's probably very readable. It's a C-based programming language which has been out for C. It's been out for 40 odd years. It's been taught in universities from the beginning, arguably. So it's probably as readable as a language as you get, is my position. So that's there's hundreds of engineering books written on C-based language and dozens of tutorials. So I don't think that argument's true. What Ian did allude to is there are a few attack vectors or vulnerabilities, and the more complex a language can become, the more, I guess, susceptible it is to those, potential bugs from the compiler down to the interpretation of the language and reading the documentation. But that's, I guess, a trade-off between having a language that's flexible and more modern, I'd argue, than having a language that doesn't contain for those features that a modern language would. And Solidity is by no means the panacea of all languages. It's still very limited. Like Bitcoin opcodes, only opcat came back out, so Bitcoin has actually redacted a lot of their splicing and a few other opcodes in the early beginning to make the language limited. So Solidity is still, limited in some things, but at the end of the day, it performs quite well, and the amount of contracts deployed on Ethereum is evidence of that.
Oh, I don't disagree. I'll say yes, that is true. And Ethereum or Solidity is readable for any trained developer, right? But let's say if normal user, as we call, want to validate a transaction, right? So you are offered a pop-up in your MetaMask and say, hey, you're buying a token or whatever that may be. How the user is able to actually understand that code, right? And I guess that's where clarity is probably a little bit better, because it is building a more human readable without having that developer background experience. And it allows for what we call the post conditions, right? So there is some UI components that allow a full rollback of the transaction in case of anything goes off the scope. So let's say that step of trust but verify, it allows the verify to be actually done in a way that probably Solidity, yes, like a trained developer will be able to go up the chain and understand all the smart contracts and all the steps, but maybe a user with a less technical background is able to do that more quickly using Clarity. But I agree, it is a trade-off. The more complex the language, the more vectors attacks you may be.
Yeah, I think you've actually identified something there too, because if we define them as smart contracts and use the word contracts, if you can't read a legal contract, you'd probably seek advice and get an interpretation of what that means, and interpret that into a layman. And also, your risk is determined by the size of that contract. If you're signing a property contract, you might want to get advice. If it's your terms and conditions for your internet provider, maybe you skip through it. So this behavior has been, ever since contractual law was been around. So just because one person can't read it doesn't mean it's more or less secure. Just seek advice and before you.
No, but I guess the point is, in some cases, you think you are signing, your terms and conditions for your internet provider, but you're selling off your house for $1, right? So I guess that's where it comes into place. But I get your point. Like it does take into consideration the need to take external advice. But then the whole Bitcoin ethos is, well, we don't want external advice. We want everyone to just be able to understand that by themselves, right? So how can we achieve that? And that's, again, is one of the ideas behind Clarity. And then just 2 points on that, or maybe one on that and one on Ethereum itself. I guess in the age of AI, if you allow me to say that, English is the programming language, right? Because nowadays, well, I use GitHub Copilot, for example, and it does half of my job for me, right? And I believe in a few years' time, it doesn't matter Solidity or Clarity, you will be able to do a decent job to at least propose any contract you want if you're able to define the legal terms, if you will, right? But then coming back to the Ethereum Solidity, maybe a small critique, if you allow me. There is an example. I don't remember the rock band that they always ask for an M&M spec in their table without the brown ones. Have you heard about this one?
No, just not for me at the moment.
Yeah. So basically what they do is they ask for a pack of M&Ms without the brown ones, right? And why they do that? It's because that's a threshold for them to understand whether or not those guys are reading the guidelines, right? So if they find one brown M&Ms, that means, well, we may need to check for more stuff. Maybe they are not doing what they're saying they are doing. And I guess if you do that analysis in the Solidity coding, you'll find lots of typos and a lot of things that maybe like a few years ago, that's fine. But like we're in what, version 6 or whatever it is now, right? Like those things were not supposed to be there anymore. I guess there's maybe, again, not being pessimist about it. I know it supports a lot and is a great language, but maybe there's, some due diligence and some homework that the ecosystem needs to take upon themselves as well to increase that, right? So what do you think?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of points there. we could talk about this all day. Gordon, I know there's someone in the audience with their hand up, so I don't know how you want to handle that, but I'll just give another minute because I know we want to move things along and probably can continue at the end. I just want to address some of the misinformation again that Gordon deliberately put out at the start about decentralization. Full disclosure, I have shares in a Bitcoin mine that was doing 3% of the network hash. So we're aware of the complexity of Bitcoin mining, but I'd argue that with proof of stake is actually probably more decentralized because anyone can run, a small computer and validate the network. So I think it's fair to say that Bitcoin has a massive centralization problem. There's probably only 6 core developers, and a few of them have actually rolled off. So actually get a change to the protocol with only one client is very hard. You're actually at the mercy of probably 6 core developers versus Ethereum, who has a great ecosystem of clients, client diversity, they all play nicely in a lot of different languages, so any developer can get in there and write their own client, unlike Bitcoin, where an alternative client is frowned upon if not attacked. And running, you know, a decentralized validator node for a very limited capital expense to decentralize the network is, you know, again, evidence to say why Ethereum is more decentralized than Bitcoin. But I'll throw it back to Gordon. I'll leave it at that, and we'll continue at the end. But it's been great so far, Ian.
Yeah, nice. It's interesting that I've had a lot of the developers come over into the Bitcoin side of building on Bitcoin ecosystem purely for the fact their theory was that once Ethereum went to proof of stake, that they lost the, you know, the censorship resistance was the main thing. So yeah, probably a bit of another debate, but that we can maybe that's another debate in itself. Andre, you had some questions for the guys. I mean, just to talking about the different smart languages. Fire away.
No, I just wanted to point out your first comparison between Solidity and Clarity that you said that was good. That Solidity has vulnerabilities, which are reentrancy guard, and the problem is with loops. So, for example, the most of hacks happened with the loops, with the phrases in the loops of Solidity core structure, and also with the usage of that reentrancy guard and usage of admin tools. So smart contracts could be taken over by another host, and admin can use this functionality from the contract and misuse it for its purposes to hack or to steal the funds. So that's what I like about Clarity, because they don't have reentrancy guard and they don't use loops, and it's not compiled, so lots of bugs doesn't happen on a compiling system. So that's just one point which I wanted to point out, the main difference, because I am developer of Solidity. I use Solidity as a putting contracts on testnet, mainnet in different EVM compatible chains. But I surpassed to Clarity because of that usage. And I think that that's the power of Clarity, because it doesn't compiles, it doesn't use those reentrancy guards, it doesn't have loops, and it's how to say, it's only readable. What you read, that's what you get. So it's not like in Solidity, when something compiles, you can have some totally different output of the contract, and it can mislead to some bugs and issues. So that's what I wanted to say, to add.
Yeah. Thanks, Andre. So Lucas, it was a question with you've been around through the whole phase of the development of Solidity and all of these things that have been raised there. How do they, you know, a lot of tools have also been built to deal with reentrancy and loops and the likes there. Can you just share a bit about that with us?
Yeah, I mean, they are valid concerns. Like I said, there's, I guess, formal verification of contracts, and there's auditors that do that as well. So that means that the contracts behave as they think they were intended. Also from the compilers, also, you know, there's a couple of compilers in different language, so they're making sure they're formally verified. And then, you know, like I said, the other one, you know, the other way to try and address this is, you know, Lego block style contracts that have been thoroughly tested, like, you know, OpenZeppelin's probably the leader in that, to solve these. And these are education as well, to try and just, you know, use off-the-shelf components and focus on your framework and your business logic that you want to do. But like I said, it's you know, but the trade-off is, you know, that you are free to do whatever you want. So great power, great responsibility, those kind of things. But yeah, it's interesting nonetheless. But I personally would choose a more flexible language than a more rigid language to give us the freedom of expression and try and, you know, meet the requirements as opposed to being limited by a system.
Yeah, nice. Ian, do you want to come back on any thoughts there?
No, I think I agree with both Andre and Lucas. I think Clarity is a language that is more secure by default. for building applications, but the trade-off is, well, it is limited by default, right? And it is a decidable language. It is, you know, again, not compiled as a script language. Yeah, and it does have benefits like the cost estimation. It's really precise. You have native support for custom tokens. And again, I guess there are some of that maybe Solidity could also implement without losing the ability and the flexibility that they have. And so far, I do have experience with Solidity, and I have been working as a developer for probably 20 years in the enterprise software space, and I never find anything in Solidity that I was not able to reproduce in Clarity, right? So there is this premise, you know, I may be limited or whatever, and that may be true, but I didn't find, and I do not know any Clarity developer that was able to raise their hand and say, hey, I was not able to do A, B, C, or D because of, you know, whatever. There is always a way to really deliver the same output. But yeah, look, it's probably more a decision around what's the chain and what's the ecosystem that you are aiming to use, right? So yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I was actually with the questions that I was going to have for Matthew, if he was able to make it, and regrettably he's not able, was that we could probably cover some of those with you, Lucas, here now. Is you having a developer house, DLTX Labs, you obviously deal with a bunch of clients that come in. Some of them have their own ideas about what blockchain they want to use. What sort of process do you go through with those? I guess as a software developer, what considerations would you be giving in regards to building an application for them and choosing the chain and choosing the smart contract language?
Yeah, good question. So I guess it's more, like I said, more the commercial side we're poking in here. So actually I started the journey doing color coins back in 2014. That was the first commercial project first paid commercial project in Bitcoin. So for those playing along at home, that was the first attempt at putting assets on Bitcoin using the op return code. The problem with that is that unless wallets are compatible, then you can spend those Satoshis and burn assets. And there wasn't really that full EIP standard or BIP standard around that. So it was a bit fragmented, and then, you know, the block times and those kind of considerations didn't really meet the client's expectations. So after that, started moving into Ethereum, and, you know, meeting the client's expectations was a lot easier. So this is about, as I said, trying to solve the business problems. But generally, you know, we come in with an open mind, and you know, like everything, there's finites as the constraints, being budget and expectations and ecosystem and support and tooling. So ecosystem is, you know, in this space, one of the advantages of blockchain is to have that network effect. So trying to choose a chain that fits with your business model or industry is probably the first and foremost. So some chains do, like Polygon, there's a lot of, and Arbitrum, a lot of DeFi stuff on that, you know, same with Ethereum. So for the DeFi client, they might want to play in that space. If their community is around, you know, more Bitcoin maxis, then obviously we might look at, you know, ordinals or those kind of frameworks. But it's really, and you know, you can never service all of them. It's about trying to find that network effect and trying to build something within the client's budget. And that's really the biggest constraint. With infinite amount of time and money, we could build anything, but that's not realistic. So yeah, trying to thread the needle there and deliver their expectations and get them to market so they can, you know, get a return on that investment.
Yeah, nice, Lucas. So just on another point there, this is around smart contract developers or developers, new developers, full stack developers coming into the space. I asked a question to the guys at Labries when I was there about you know, how did they come across learning a smart contract language? Did they learn it in university? Where did they you know, where did they learn about it? And I've seen that most bootstrap their own learning from that. I'd ask the question more for the universities and like, When it comes to learning smart contract languages, do you see the universities playing a role in Web3 development?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think at that point, it's like, yes, if someone's come from university, you could argue they've done C languages and JavaScript, so then syntax feels and the tooling and frameworks around Solidity feels probably familiar if that's the syllabus in universities. But now even with like frameworks like Foundry, which is a Rust-based testing framework around Solidity, then again, so it really depends on the universities are teaching. If they're brand new, so to speak, and agnostic, then I think Clarity and other things, other technologies would also fit within that syllabus because it's a bit more diversity. And one thing you learn as a developer, there's multiple languages and frameworks and everything to do multiple things, from database design to whatever to front end technology. So having, I guess, a taste in all the technologies gives a developer some broader context. So when a problem comes along, they've got a tool at their disposal to execute and develop and solve that problem. So I would welcome that all these frameworks we talk about tonight get taught at university, and then then the developer has a broader context on which tool to apply to their specific problem.
Yeah, awesome. It's something that Herman and I discussed earlier today, about the context of understanding blockchains itself prior to diving into which smart contract language I might learn. So Herman, if you don't mind, if I could move over to yourself to tap into your expertise and for a guide to Web3 stack developers that come along. You own your own software company. You have a knowledge and passion that's immense. I couldn't think of anyone better to talk about layer 0, layer 1 blockchains, what's coming and more. So let's talk about different chains. Over to you, Herman.
Well, thank you, Gordon, for that intro and for the privilege to talk with you guys today. So yeah, as you mentioned, I've got my own software company. I've been a software engineer for over 20 years. I've been in crypto since 2011. And I've been developing in it pretty much exclusively since around 2014. My company is primarily an R&D shop, so we're not really doing a lot of client-facing work. We're really just building our own tech, and in the layer 1 space. So I've done a lot of work in that space. But we also build products. I mean, one of the products we've built is blockchain SQL Explorer, which is like an SQL sort of backend for the Bitcoin blockchain. And that product really gave me sort of a good detailed knowledge of the Bitcoin protocol. So I can talk a bit about that later. But I've also built a token management system to issue your own tokens that was blockchain agnostic. You could issue it over the Bitcoin using Colorcoin. You could issue it over Ethereum using or an EVM using ERC20s. So I've got some knowledge in that as well, of the whole token thing. But one of the sort of things I'm kind of known for is I'm kind of known as like a co-developer of a layer 1 crypto called Pascal Coin, which is kind of it was okay like in 2017 timeframe. It was famously pumped on Poloniex like 4,000%. It was one of the biggest pumps in crypto history for a period of time, and so I got a bit of notoriety from that project. But that really helped me sort of learn a lot about the layer 1s and what that's really all about, and what sort of like just to like take a step back from what you guys are talking about. I think it's really important to keep in mind that this space is constantly evolving, and we're seeing evolution at every level. So I often get asked, why are you building layer 1 crypto? Because this is what my company's doing now. And a lot of people have this conception that layer 1s are done now. We have Ethereum, we have Cardano, we have Polkadot, we have all these things that we don't really need anymore. But I can tell you that it's the layer 1 wars are not over. There's going to be constant evolution in that front, just in the same way that word processor wars weren't over when WordPerfect came out. You had like WordPerfect and Microsoft Word, then you had like Notion and stuff now. So there's always a constant evolution in that front. Same with layer 1s and same with layer 2s and all the stuff you guys are talking about, which is like the scripting languages and all that. There's a whole bunch of innovation going on in that space. So I'll just give an example, like with layer 1 scripting, you've got like Simula script, you've got Liquid script, you've got the Cardano Plutus things that they're doing with Haskell. You've got ErgoScript. These are sort of the more minor ones that not people know about, but they're also used in the smart contracting space, and everyone's competing with each other. One thing I want to say about Solidity, that like Solidity was kind of invented by Gavin Wood in one day. Like he basically, they had these variants, these little scripting languages, and they came up with this JavaScript clone that was good for the EVM model. And it was rushed through. It was kind of like, and now it's taken over. It's very dominant. And just like JavaScript, if you ever talk to the inventor of JavaScript, he says one of his biggest regrets was inventing JavaScript because it turned out to dominate the web space, and he kind of doesn't like the language because it's kind of a primitive language. I think if you ask Gavin Wood that question, what's his thoughts on Solidity, he might give you a similar response. It wasn't a big thing for them. It was just something that they needed to get scripting happening on Ethereum, and it's turned into this huge thing, right? So that's the reason I talk about that is because that's I think there's going to be new innovations in that space, and I can get into them if you want later, but just keep that in mind. So if you're going to be learning this stuff, it's good to learn something that's market relevant. So right now it's Solidity, Clarity with stacks, because that's got a whole bunch of capital they can unlock in Bitcoin. So there's good stuff there, and there's good opportunities to make some money. But you always got to have it in the context of that the tech space is evolving. You should know where you sit in the sort of layer one hierarchy, or sorry, the layers of blockchain. So there's different types of blockchains, and there's different types of smart contracting technologies which can be combined. You're really going to have a contextual understanding of where you sit, so that you can evolve with the market, because it's evolving very, very quickly. So
you brought up some good points there about the Bitcoin layer, the layer ones or layer zeros, whichever you want to call them, are not over yet. In 2017, we obviously had the massive growth of Ethereum. In the next chapter of the crypto ecosystem, we saw a plethora of other chains: Algorand, Hedera Hashtag, you name it. There's like so many different blockchains that have been created. So this round, we are seeing the layer 2 ecosystem go nuts on Bitcoin. But yeah, where do you see things going from here as we go through this cycle into the next cycle?
Well, okay, so right now we're seeing this interest in the Bitcoin ecosystem again, which is really driven by this idea that you can now unlock this capital and this value in the Bitcoin network, and they're trying to find these sort of tech stacks that you can hook into Bitcoin, and then you can use it to for other purposes, for DeFi and all that sort of stuff, right? So what you're seeing there, it's like the tech isn't the greatest. It's kind of, and I don't, I'm an admirer of all tech. This isn't anything personal against anyone, but just the reality of the fact that you have to integrate with a generation 0 blockchain like Bitcoin. You're forced into this sort of this domain of this UTXO domain, this script domain, and it's limited fundamentally what you can do, right? But things like Clarity, great. That will be good tools to unlock the value in Bitcoin, and that's good, and that's got its own part. But if you look at it from the tech perspective, like what is actually going to be the future of Web3 smart contracts and that sort of thing, you really have to start looking at these newer technologies that are emerging, but they don't have the value behind them. That's the kind of the paradox right now. So because they don't have the value, there's not much interest in them, except for a lot of tech nerds and geeks and stuff. But the bet is that in future, that just by being superior tech-wise, that it will take that precedence in the market. So I focus my time mainly on the advanced sort of tech stuff. So with that, what I think is, to answer your question, I think that look, to really answer your question, I need to just get something quickly, cover something quickly with the audience, just so we know, have a context of what we're talking about. Like with blockchains, I've got my own taxonomy of categorizing blockchains. So, I've got when you talk about Bitcoin, I consider that like a generation 0 blockchain. That's like a UTXO based blockchain, and it does its own things. The Satoshi model, it's built a certain way, and that's like Gen 0. Things like Ethereum, I consider a generation 1 Bitcoin, a blockchain, because they introduced this idea of a state-based transition, where, you know, in Ethereum they have like an account model, and you can, you know, the accounts have balances and you can transfer between them. And the idea there is you have state and state transitions. Then you have generation 2 blockchains, which is what I'm really into at the moment. Things like Polkadot, Cosmos, stuff like that, more Polkadot. And they have sharding. So they're like Gen 1 with sharding, which is the ability to have multiple chains connected together. And they're also what they call heterogeneous, which means that they don't impose on you a certain way of doing things. They don't impose on you the consensus rules. The consensus rules are dynamic and changeable and can be changed, okay? So that's the kind of the blockchain thing. Then within each one of those, you have different layer 2 like languages to do stuff on those chains. So with a Gen 0 blockchain like Bitcoin, you've got things like Bitcoin script, which is what you guys are talking about. You've got, you know, the BSV guys have their own script. You've got Simula script, Liquid script, which is from you know, for the Liquid network. Cardano, which is kind of a Gen 0 blockchain because they're UTXO based. They've got Plutus and stuff. For Gen 1, then you also get Gen 1 languages like Solidity, Michelson, Clarity, and one that's pretty good that not people know about, but it's gaining traction. It's called Ink, which is a Rust-based language. So that's like a Gen 1. But the one to answer your question, so now we're getting to like what the actual answer is. I'm looking at Gen 2 smart contracting languages on Gen 2 blockchains. And for that, I like this thing called FAT contracts, the PHAT. And that's done by the Fala network. And what they do is that's basically like a WASM program. It's a smart contract that runs at the speed of normal computer programs, and it runs on a decentralized network, but it's also anonymous. So you get like full anonymity in your data state and your execution state. So that's what I think is the future. And I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of investment in that, you know, in the years ahead. But right now, it's all in Solidity. It's all in Ethereum and all that, and the layer 2s of Ethereum, because that's where the money's at. But it will move, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I'm not the tech guy, but I hear a lot of this stuff about the WASM. I know that Stacks are doing something with the WASM, and I was reading about a couple of the other chains today. Hyro Systems write some really good blogs, which are very up to date with what's going on. And yeah, that's definitely it's emerging. A lot of tech to be built out, but really interesting stuff. But you were talking about you mentioned in there about where the money is and the, you know, the smaller ecosystems and the likes, and whether they'll get traction because of the money. And I couldn't think of a better person to have here is Michael Cotton from Optio Capital. So Michael's got a wealth of experience on the Algorand blockchain, which has obviously got a lower network effect at the present time, but also is out there scoping the landscape for projects for investment. So Michael, I've got a couple of questions here for you, but love to have an introduction from yourself, and we can get into it.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Gordon. Hey, everyone. Michael Cotton from Optio Capital. I'm the CPO at Optio Capital. A bit of background. I came into the space in about 2014. Probably kicking and screaming is maybe a good description, in the sense that my first introduction made it seem more like the Wild West than something that I thought I'd be interested in. I'm from more of a traditional finance background. I started a gold business here in Australia. I'm a single man operation originally. It's now one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. Still a major shareholder in that company, but went full-time into the blockchain space in 2018 and first entered in 2014. My initial reaction was, this looks fairly crazy. This looks very foreign. This looks very difficult for the general public to adopt. But thankfully, I had some really good people in the space that were able to walk me through where they sort of see the technology going, and, you know, how we were really in the infant stages. So I have now been full-time in the space since 2018. Our first fund deployed just under 40 investments in total. A chunk of that was in the Algorand ecosystem. So we met Silvio Micali when he came out to Australia and had a really strong fondness for Silvio. Interestingly enough, Silvio also contributed to the Clarity language. So there is some, you know, synergies between Algorand and Stacks, but we also have invested deeply into the Ethereum space, Solana, and a range of other ecosystems as well. And Optio Capital is Fund 2, which is more of a multi-chain fund, so it has a far more broad spectrum in terms of the focus in investment.
Yeah, awesome. So I noticed that that connection between Silvio Mercalli and the Algorand team and the guys from Princeton and the guys from MIT that developed Clarity smart contract languages. That sort of brought us together after the Algorand ecosystem chats that we used to have. So at the moment, are you guys leaning towards Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem to look for opportunities?
Yeah, certainly. So we have been investing into the space already. So, you know, the most recent being Zest, which is one of the protocols building on top of Stacks. They're native lending against Bitcoin. So for anyone who's very familiar with things like Maple Finance, I liken it in a very similar fashion to, you know, a Bitcoin-based or a Stacks-based version of the same thing. So we're certainly, and we talk to a lot of the teams very regularly, you know, catching up with Phil from like Stacking DAO and Arcadico and some of the other interesting projects on Stacks as well. You're on mute, Gordon.
Oh, sorry about that. So Michael, why do you think Bitcoin's getting so much traction at the moment, or building on Bitcoin layer 2s?
I think Herman, you touched on this a little bit earlier. Like, you know, the market is very flooded now as well. You know, we're seeing that the number of layer 1s, layer 2, layer 0 to layer 3, let's call it, is enormous. Like, there's such a huge number of different protocols coming to market that are trying to find their place in the market. You know, I think we see a mixture of strategies. Some are trying to be really heavily focused and have very specific verticals. Some are trying to be sort of the everything to everyone. You know, I think good examples of that are things like Immutable X, obviously have an incredibly strong gaming focus, you know, really, really tight strategy in terms of what they're focusing on, you know, versus things like Algorand, which are sort of, you know, pushing for the idea that they're a foundational tech that could be used for, you know, absolutely any use case that would want to leverage blockchain technology. You know, I think where Bitcoin is kind of interesting is getting cut through in a busy marketplace is not necessarily easy. And Bitcoin already has an incredibly strong narrative. So the concept of building a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin that solves, you know, to Lucas's point, you know, there's another debate about decentralization of Bitcoin, and you know that's probably a separate conversation. But the idea of building a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin to solve the third leg of scalability is a really interesting narrative, and there's a really strong story that can be told there. So, you know, to successfully build out something that could be securely attached to the Bitcoin blockchain and provide that scalability element, while, you know, which I think is a combination of two things, it's transaction speed and cost. I think all those things compile into scalability, is a really strong narrative. So, you know, if things like Stacks with the Nakamoto upgrade can really see some cut through in delivering on that, you know, scalability element on top of Bitcoin, it's a really strong story to be told that has value in market that goes beyond just the technology as well.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing. You know, when you come into a game, it's like, what would compel you to want to go and build in a particular ecosystem and find great success? You know, there are, I guess we meet a lot of young people that have the desire to create $1 billion company, whether they've got the resilience or not. We do have a program that we funnel them into to help them determine whether they do want to be a founder. That is, you know, commit your life for 10 years to a project. You know, it's not some simple game. If someone's going to give you $5 million, $50 million, or $100 million, or like Immutable X, $200 million in their raise. So I think the way I see things at the moment on the Bitcoin network, you know, we're at, I think it's 980 billion in latent capital in Bitcoin. You know, the Bitcoin blockchain's been battle tested for security and the open nature. They're the three reasons I'm seeing from most of the developers coming in. But Michael, just let me get, sorry, I'm just got a bit lost here. Lucas, I just wanted to go over to you just a couple of things, and between you and Michael. In the Ethereum ecosystem, it's obviously a much more mature ecosystem. Over on Stacks, for example, we have the opportunity to build out most things that were built on Ethereum, like decentralized finance applications, Uniswap type applications, and the likes. But over in the Ethereum ecosystem, we're going into a much more mature stage. For developers, what would they be expecting over in Ethereum nowadays versus in these younger chains where there might be newer, exciting opportunities?
I guess it's probably a couple of things is, tooling and, support and infrastructure and community that can't be underestimated. Like, I know there's a few Bitcoin conferences, but like, Consensus and ETH Denver and a few other ones that are really, prominent ETH space, which, get everyone together and share these ideas. So that's, I think, really important to, create that appetite and demand and excitement for stuff. That's probably one thing I'd suggest. So, it's like everyone on your journey, you're always going to have challenges, and to have a community to reach out to and documentation and support networks can't be underestimated. So I think when that happens more in the Stacks, and I know Stacks and Clarity doing a great inroads into that, but like I said, just can't be underestimated having a network of people to to support that, and it really makes that decision when easier when you get frustrated or something. And then, like I said before, just having that network effect, it's you don't want to be the only one with an email address and can't email anyone, so you need to make sure that chains work best when there's supporting projects around it. Like as we mentioned, Maple works well because you can blend in and you got tokens and that on top of it. Maple probably use other DeFi protocols to hedge their positions. So you want to really get that network effect, and it is a little bit chicken and egg. You can't get into that until there are supporting projects around there, but that's just a two-sided market problem.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. Just back to you. When you guys are looking at projects, what would say what would three main things be that you'd be looking for?
Look, one thing I'll add to what Lucas said as well, Gordon, which I think another important factor is, one of the best audits, I think, for security within a blockchain is time. I often sort of refer to it that the bigger the honeypot is there for the taking, and the longer it sort of stands up and is unexploited or doesn't get exploited, the stronger a protocol or a project is considered. And so then the safer the capital that sits there. So I think that's a really important factor. I don't think we've seen layer twos in Bitcoin actually have that same level of, a honeypot that's been there, that's been available for, attack vectors to really be tested. So the idea that it'll happen really fast, I think there's obviously a curve that we're talking about here in terms of growth, but we need to be conscious that these things are real factors. And when we're talking about something that does require time to be really battle tested properly, and we're seeing that even, Lucas mentioned Open Zeppelin, things like this kind of tooling that are battle tested, hardened, smart contracts that can be taken off the shelf are really valuable and really important. So, attracting the capital flow, is always going to be more difficult when you're facing those kind of headwinds. And the other sort of thing that time has a factor in, is we've seen success in EVM, right? We've seen a lot of projects actually grow and become unicorns on the EVM side. To repeat something that's already been done is generally considered easier to do. So, the idea that you could be investing in something on the EVM side that is a strong idea, that has a strong market fit, and it meets some of the metrics that you think are suitable for a high growth project means you've almost got a barometer in terms of where you think that project could go. From an investment point of view. So we are still to many degrees untested on the Bitcoin side. Like ordinals, you could say, is maybe a barometer for, what can really take place. What the fees generated by ordinals alone, I think we're past 150 million now on the Bitcoin side. So, there is a barometer of sorts, but we're still really to see all that play out. In terms of developers, like I think one of the other big differences is if you go into the EVM side, far more tooling, far more infrastructure, there's far more composability, far more collaborative opportunities. There's a bigger audience that's eager and ready. But you're also competing with, 100x the projects, 100x, the people who are vying for the same eyes and for the same funds. So that's really important to sort of keep in mind. Whereas, you come over to something like a Bitcoin layer 2, there's a lot of interest. So there's certainly an incredible opportunity currently, but you are having to do more work and a harder sell and more work on the development side to achieve what you want to. I think also anyone who sort of sets out to be a billionaire, I don't know how many of those people actually ever become billionaires. I feel like most of the people who end up in that category probably didn't intend to be there, similar to some of the best creators, right? They sort of did it for fun or as a joke, and they end up being, incredibly successful due to their passion and their actual talent. So I think that's probably one thing, anyone who gets on and says they're going to be the next billionaire, I'd probably instantly be slightly nervous. But someone who has a really deep understanding of the product, a really deep understanding of the problem they're solving, a deep understanding of the competition, which I think is often very underestimated, is what does their competition look like? They don't need to have a very strict go-to-market strategy, but they need to understand the fundamentals of what compiling a good go-to-market strategy would be, or finding someone who could. That's really important as well. And then I think someone who's got some grit. I think you've got to be willing to, when times get tough, knuckle down. And we've seen that in this last 12 to 24 months. A lot of projects where people have really knuckled down. They've shrunk teams, they've shrunk expenses, and they've done what's needed to be done, and still retained a passion for what they're doing. So sometimes it's hard to really tell how real those things are until they're actually, in the middle of it. But that's definitely a really important factor as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Look, I really look forward to this next bull run, in that to see, so much tooling, so many opportunities have been created on so many chains. And as a lot more people come into the space, it's going to be very exciting to see who actually gets, a real marketplace. So super excited for that. Lucas just had to drop off. Got a couple of things he's got to go to. But look, I wanted to go over to Joe. Tonight was about looking at the opportunities for new developers coming into the space, getting the opportunity to hear from the OGs in the space. But Joe, you're fairly new to the world of developing and smart contracts. I wanted to make sure that we had someone new here speaking tonight. So can you tell us, how did you come to be a smart contract? Or introduce yourself and tell us how you came to be a smart contract developer.
Yeah, my name is Joe, and I've been developing since August of 2021, and in blockchain specifically since October of 2021. And how that came about is, well, originally I was actually an English teacher, and when there were some policy changes in China, the platform that I was teaching on, which was based in China for Chinese students, shut down overnight. And my whole goal of learning to code was that I wanted to rebuild that platform, but then I realized I'd probably make more money building websites than teaching, unfortunately. So I taught myself to code, and then only knowing HTML and CSS, I started applying to different jobs. And DLTX, actually, which Lucas is the founder of, took a chance on me with my just pure audacity of, look at how great my HTML is. And yeah, they had some really great senior devs at the time who mentored me into becoming a full stack developer and teaching me the smart contract side of things. My partner specifically was my mentor at the time, and he was the one who specifically taught me how to code in Solidity. Yeah, but now I work for Labris, and yeah, they have a bit more opportunity to code on different chains. So now I've done some smart contract work on Ethereum and on Solana, and on a bunch of layer 2s like Polygon, Arbitrum, Optimism. And yeah, I know earlier there was some mention about like the involvement of universities in teaching the different languages. I certainly think that's important. However, I don't think that it's necessary for everybody to go to a university, because unfortunately it isn't accessible for everybody. And one thing I really love about blockchain and technology is that you can teach yourself, and blockchain does have a really great, really supportive community around it. Regardless of the chain, any chain that you go to, there's going to be a great community and people who are willing to help you and teach you. So yeah, that's me and my story.
No, that's awesome. So working for Labries, you obviously work for, I dropped into your offices there the other week, looked like a fun space to work. What's it like to work with in a software development company in the world of Web3?
Yeah, it's really nice. I feel like we have some really great seniors there as well. So Matt is actually my senior, and I'm really sad that he's not here tonight to share his knowledge, because he does have so much. So yeah, we kind of have the seniors who just kind of plan everything. But what I really like about being a junior in this space is that the seniors plan the app, and then you get to actually build it, and they just kind of help guide you. So you're writing the code and it's not like they're like looking down on you. They're really just there to support you. So being a software developer, I think, is really great, especially when you do have people around to support you. And I've been really lucky that all of my seniors throughout my journey have been wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the things that we do in the Stacks Clarity Developer Program is, you know, how do we gauge whether a smart contract developer is a good smart contract developer? So one of the things is to have their smart contracts audited. So going through your journey, have you actually got to that stage where you've had your own contracts audited? How does that look? Tell us a bit about that journey.
Well, actually, the first time that I did touch Solidity, like in client work, was to fix audit bugs that the audit had brought up, because that was what my company, like, they didn't trust me to write the contract fully yet. They needed to see the proof of my work. So they had me fix the bugs instead, because what makes, I think, a good Solidity developer or smart contract developer is that you have to think not just in terms of does the code work, but also, is this secure? Is this gas efficient? Can somebody game this system somehow? Can somebody access this function in a way that might be harmful to my app or my ecosystem that I'm trying to build? And I think that's really the difference between like blockchain development and just like normal JavaScript, or Python or whatever have you. So
Yeah, awesome. Joe touched on a couple of points there, being able to estimate your gas fees, and the other one, there was a second point there, but can you just comment on how Clarity solves that problem?
Yeah, I guess first, thanks for sharing your journey with us, Joe. I think that's quite amazing, and it always warms my heart when I see someone jumping into development, you know, and how that can actually change people's lives. But sorry for digressing a bit. It's just that's one of my passions, is to really get people to jumping onto that space, right? But going to that, I think if you have the chance, or if you want to start learning a little bit more of Clarity, just to have another tool in your toolbox, you can see that the cost estimation in Clarity is close to exact, right? So I don't think there was any case of a transaction being sent and not completed because the gas was too much or whatever. It just gives you the right estimate with like a 99% chance of being exactly that. So you can embed that into the code in a really nice way. And regarding security, I guess, well, there is always a mindset to make sure your functions are, you know, not public and anything like that. And what Clarity does differently in that is that the default is to be secure, right? So you don't need to think that much. You don't need to set everything back to private. It's just to start as private, and you open up the parts that you really believe should be open. So there is a lot of helpers in the code as well. There is like a checkers that allow you to, while you are, you know, doing your code, you can test and validate. And also when you are in the DevNet and in the testnet, the result will be exactly the same in prod. It's just, yeah, it's really developer friendly in a way if you compare with Solidity, right? So yeah.
Nice. Thanks for that, Ian. I appreciate you sharing that. Joe, so having been a teacher, I've seen, I did find a little link there about yourself somewhere and about your passion for teaching and possibly helping other developers. Is that something you were going to be interested in actually being a trainer for other smart contract developers?
yeah, I can send the link right now because I know what you're talking about. I made like a little like personal website portfolio. So like you might click some links and you'll get a 404. But this page specifically talks about my journey again, and what I'm passionate about, and just like little fun facts about me, because it is my website and I can do what I want. But yeah, I think one thing I really am passionate about is getting more smart contract developers, and honestly getting more female smart contract developers, because if you look at this meetup, I think me and Electra might be the only two women. So we definitely need more women in the space. And yeah, I'm the only female smart contract developer I know. So I would like to get more women in this space. And I think one of the problems there is accessibility. So I'm hoping that on that website, I can share my knowledge of how like I taught myself the different tools that I use and things like that, so that we can get more people into the space.
Yeah, that's awesome, Joe. So just to let you know that with Stacks, we have a smart contract developer program, but we also have a train the trainer program. So for anyone that's here that does end up going through Clarity, we do have a program also for you to become a trainer. So Ian's going to be doing the trainer program, I believe, but we'll post some links about that. Guys, pretty much that's about what I had planned for tonight. I just wanted to give everyone the opportunity to share their stories, talk about the companies, what they're building. It was also a bit of a showcase for Queensland and what we're building up here in Queensland. Everyone here tonight, except Ian, is from Brisbane, and you know, quite a few OGs from the beginners right through to the OGs in the space. We can share that we, Stacks Australia, are starting a smart contract developer learning program with Griffith University on the Gold Coast. We're looking to kick that off in March. So that'll be a dedicated program to learning smart contracts. It also involve a project-based learning plan, and Ian is going to be working on that with us. We're just going through some of the final stages of that, and that could lead to a much larger and more significant program. A new PhD student that's starting at Griffith is looking at some product building a supply chain solution using Nostar, and that student will also be heading up or looking to set up the student blockchain club at the university. So that's some of the programs that we've got going on. So I've got a link there that I'll share with you. We will be looking for industry partners to help in that program. So people that can come online and speak, or if they're at the university, do some sessions there. So we'll post that link for anyone that wants to be involved, whether Joe, you as a starter there, Michael talking about opportunities in the finance side, in the capital raising side, and Herman, you know, I know that you've got something new on the way. Can you tell us a bit about that and the opportunities that students might have?
Okay, I wasn't planning to make any disclosures on this stream, but
oh, we don't have to. We don't have to. We like a bit of alpha on every chat.
I'll just say that, like, you know, what I was saying earlier about the layer one wars, and like they're not over, and you know, there's always people building them. Just like there's people today, they're building like new word processors, or they're building new things that you think have already been done. There's new versions coming out, and I've dedicated sort of the last 5 years of my life full time on building that, and we're building a new layer 0, layer 1. Just one thing I want to clarify about this, and I know the industry, there's kind of like this jargon that's been talked about with layer 0s, and really all layer 0s are just actually layer 1s. And they only really call them layer 0s because they don't want to call their layer 2s layer 2s. They want to call their layer 2s layer 1s because it's better for marketing. So with things like Cosmos or Polkadot say, oh, we're like a layer 0, they're really just a generic heterogeneous layer 1. And you know, their layer 2s are more beefed up layer 2s than you would typically find with something like Ethereum. But anyway, I just want to say, so I'm building a layer 1 or a layer 0, you know, depending on how you want to classify it, and it's really going down the route of, you know, how we can go take blockchain to the next level, scaling wise, you know, throughput. So in terms of, you know, the whole throughput, but also like what we can do with it. So we're not just talking about like a smart contract that runs like a script that changes the state that everyone agrees on. That's kind of done now. That's kind of like, you know, that's good. We can do that with Ethereum EVMs. What we need is like a Web3 AWS or a Web3 Azure that can run actual programs that don't just run this limited sandbox, that can do a lot more than that. But they're also, you know, decentralized, permissionless, and secure, right? So that's kind of where I'm going with my tech stack. and I hope to launch something this year. So thank you for mentioning that.
No, that's awesome, Herman. So I just want to share one last thing with everyone on the screen. Just let me find it here. Oops.
Gordon, I'll have a crack at Ryan's question too after you've done that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, my apologies.
So I think there is one question on the chat from Rayan. So does anyone see any overlap with AI and crypto in terms of development in the future? And if I can start asking or answering that question, maybe in 15 seconds, I will tell you about one project I am doing that basically, if you guys heard about BitVM, is a bit of a way of exploring processing using the Bitcoin as a confirmation layer, right? But it relies on a second or a third party to validate whether something was confirmed or not. What I'm trying to achieve is a prototype where you can link that, but replace the third or second person using an AI bot. So I'm training a model to kind of replace that, bringing a little bit of an extra layer of decentralization as well. So that's some of the overlap that I see happening. And also a lot of people are already building tools using AI to accelerate development and testing, right? But that's it. That was just my 2 cents on that answer, because I'm not probably the most qualified to answer all of that. So yeah.
I think if I had, oh, sorry, go for it, Herman.
No, please, yes.
From a product point of view and less a tech, I think the way I've sort of viewed it, because I think this has come up a lot, especially on the investment side in the last couple of years. It's certainly been, the hot topic is, what does AI look like, for the rest of the world, even though we've seen work in this space for a very long time. I think to many degrees is what Ian's talking about, which is, what elements can't be done on chain, but we want some kind of trustless component to be added. So the example I've used when talking about this before, anyone who heard me talk at UQ recently would have heard this, but I think Gauntlet is really interesting. If anyone's very familiar with the Gauntlet project that uses essentially DAO, what DAOs would like to achieve, or what a project would like to achieve, to make analytical based suggestions for DAO governance. Which is where things like AI can come in. So, if you have something like Curve saying they want to achieve 3 potential goals, which is a growth in terms of number of users, the highest amount of trading per dollar of TVL, or the highest APY for lack of impermanent loss, it can come up with analytically based options for DAO governance to decide. So I think this is where AI can sort of loop into these kind of areas and bring more automation and less human intervention into some of these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, that's a really great answer, Michael. I was going to say pretty much the same thing, but just worded differently. Like a lot of what you see with the AI blockchain thing, I think a lot of that is hype. People just trying to make some money with some projects. Is there a legitimate use case? I think if you look at blockchain, it's really just solving the problem of trust. So where you need AI and you need trustlessness, or you need permissionless, so like what he just said, that use case of having a DAO where you have artificially intelligent decisions being made. So that's like allocating people's money and stuff, and the community says we'll give it to an AI because we trust that AI. So how do you now run that AI in a trustless manner that's not going to steal the funds, right? So that's kind of like, an interesting use case. And I think where those two things overlap, where trust and AI overlap, there's going to be a space for running AI and blockchain together.
Yeah. So has anyone else got any questions that wanted to jump up for the panel here tonight? This is about you guys that have attended, not really about us. We haven't exactly had a death by PowerPoint tonight. We've had a good discussion, but has anyone else got any questions? You can put your hand up and come up.
But while waiting for a question, one thing I will add, which I don't think I answered properly before, I think if people are trying to work out where they should build, I think they should probably first think about what they care about in terms of what they're going to build, what is actually meaningful for them, and then sort of reverse engineer that into then where should they be focusing their energy. So if you're a really big believer in Bitcoin, you're a really big believer in the entire Bitcoin ethos, then layer 2s are probably a great place for you. If you're a believer in, other different elements, you might identify a completely different space that's of interest for you as well. So I always think that's the best place to start, is to work out where you think you would like to spend your time and what you think you'd be very passionate about building, and then try to make an analytical decision about where you're going to get the most value for yourself, in terms of where you then put that energy.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for everyone that's here. We're moving from a system which has got centralized parties, a number of larger ones that are controlling most of our funds around the world. And we're moving to the system where we're just going to, the interactions are going to be somewhat eliminating those, to where we're going to be trusting the software that you guys are building out. So we just see with the ETFs coming in and the amount of money that's coming into the ecosystem, the new money that's coming into the ecosystem, and we start to talk about trillions of dollars coming into the ecosystem and trillion-dollar economies being built. So it's really super important part in the space in time that you guys are working in. And, I think there's going to be, we started out talking about wrecked. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot of startups that fail. There's going to be a lot of blockchains that fail over this next 10, 15 years. Might be 5 years, who knows, but really super exciting time. Anyone else got some questions there? Someone's got their hand up. Well, if that's about it, guys, that's about all I have for tonight. I just wanted to share that, if I can pull up that little image there for you. If you're thinking about building on Bitcoin, you can catch the wave with Stacks Australia and what we're building over here, and build on the layer 2 Stacks blockchain. If you want to join our developer program, I've got the QR code up there that you guys can scan. That's just got a short survey in Block Survey, which you can, and we will be in touch with you. The university program, I've got a QR code there if you want to be join us as an industry partner in that. I'm sure all of you guys here will make contributions as we build that out. And in our ecosystem, I have someone that's giving me a hand. That's Sam. Sam's been working with us for over a year now. He just started a project called Stacks Labs. It's dedicated to smart contract developers. We've got our first cohort running now. It starts with the Bitcoin primer and going into a smart contract learning program. So we start that Bitcoin primer is rolling every 2 weeks to help newcomers come into the ecosystem. And myself there is my contacts, but I'll send that all out to you guys. I really appreciate everybody's time tonight coming out. We really value it. It's the most valuable resource that we've got, our time. So thanks for everyone coming along. If that's all I've got to say. Herman, if you'd like to wrap something up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gordon, for hosting this great debate / live stream and discussion that we've had. I think I've actually taken a lot out of this. And I hope that, I would just say to people, my comments on this thing are just that, this thing is, we're still in the early phases of it, both from a, price perspective, from a tech perspective, and, there's still, going to be a lot of new things that are going to be emerging even this year, especially with this new bull market that's coming. So just always keep in mind the ephemeral nature of everything that we're being exposed to. And ephemeral means it's short-lived or it's transient. It's always in fluxion and in change. So don't fall into the trap of maximalism is my thing. Like, my advice, don't think that one thing's the best, because that can lead down to things where bad outcomes. So just keep that in mind. It's all changing, it's all evolving. And and if you did commit, especially to the students who want to learn how to code, keep in mind your the context in which you exist in as a developer. Like, if you're doing Solidity, if you're doing this, where do you fit into the hierarchy of blockchain, in the tech hierarchy and all that, and know how the fundamental science of all that works, so you can evolve with the industry as it moves forward. That's
Yeah, thanks Herman, that's awesome. Michael, just any closing thoughts?
Thanks everyone for coming. It was a great chat. Hopefully we can do it again soon. I'm happy to help out on that university front too. Anything you want some speakers or anything, Gordon, you think I'd be be useful for, please feel free.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Chang, that's heading that up. She's an amazing lady, highly experienced in blockchain. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Joe, thanks for coming along tonight. How can anyone get in contact with you, particularly female developers? Have you got a females program running at all, a particular group where you think the lady developers can go?
Well, I actually just, Blockchain Australia just started an initiative for that. So I had the first meeting for that today. So not quite yet, but we're getting there. If you want to contact me, my LinkedIn is probably best. It's just Joe-Rocca. So yeah, I'm always on there. So
Yeah, awesome. That's fantastic. Ian, we've got a big journey ahead of us with this smart contract developer program. Hopefully this all goes to plan. Thanks for joining us tonight all the way from Sydney.
Thank you, Gordon, for organizing and everyone. Again, it's always good for me. I learn a lot from everyone, and also getting to see the faces up in Brisbane and Queensland. I think it's always nice. Yeah, you guys can always hit me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and yeah, any questions, technical or just for a coffee, talk about Bitcoin and blockchain. By all means, I am always open to have a chat. So thank you very much.
Yeah, awesome. So look, I think one of the most important things, I met Ian at a Sydney meetup that we held called Building on Bitcoin. I met Herman at a meetup, I think, down in Brisbane. This event has been brought to you by Bitcoin Brisbane and the Bitcoin Builders Association, which has a network of meetups all around the world. It's get yourselves out there. If you're joining the industry, get out on the street, get out to the meetups, get to know people, go to events on LinkedIn. Andre, thanks for joining us all the way from Croatia. You've been at so many different events with us. You're in the Bitcoin Startup Lab as well.
Yes.
Just give us a quick wrap on that.
Yeah, so me and my co-founder, he's from New York. We are building a decentralized NFT marketplace built on stacks for ordinals, and we are building a side layer and a protocol which will get rewards from fast pool. So users can, stake, hodl, and compound their rewards using their ordinals and may create NFTs on our platform. And Bitcoin Startup Lab is one thing that I would recommend strongly to everyone which wants to build and learn how to build the useful thing on the market, because they point to the main problem, and that is solution to one problem. So as Albert says, you have to have a killer solution and one killer problem. So to deal with that, so I strongly recommend to the guys which are building something in a startup environment.
Yeah. What's most awesome here tonight is that we've got Herman that builds blockchains. Michael has worked with so many different founders and funded projects. We've got Joe that's brand new to the ecosystem. Ian's a trainer as well as a founder working on it. And we go down to Andre, that is the guy that's going to build the next $1 billion company. So yeah. I think it's a pretty good wrap. Good to have you guys all here tonight. Thanks, Electra, for joining us, and everybody else. Hope you had a wonderful time. And you can follow us on LinkedIn, Stacks Australia, and find everyone here. But we'll call that a wrap. Thanks for everyone's time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you guys.
See you again. Yeah. Bye.